welcome to Food for Thought episode 12. Food for Thought is a show about transformation. It's here to inspire other people and show the benefits of making empowering positive transformations in your life. I've been on a transformational journey and still on one. It's an ongoing process as I find more and more things, and so have most of my guests. Today, I've got the pleasure of speaking with Jason Bishop. Jason is now a life coach who helps people with addiction and alcoholism, among other things. So I'll let him tell you more. So Jason, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Jason Bishop. Where should we start beginning, or?
Yeah, I mean, wherever you want to start, you can start with what you want to do, what you do now, or you can start with the story, whatever you want.
Well, we'll do that then. I mean, what I'm doing now is obviously, as Matt said, I'm life coaching. I wasn't really going to deal with addiction, but it would be ridiculous if I wasn't, because my life basically was full of compulsive behaviours before they became. I mean, my relationship with alcohol it got to the point where it was absolutely ludicrous, the amount I was consuming, but I was also buying things and spending money and finding any way possible to make myself feel better. But when you're I'd spend most days from 4:30 until midnight in the pub drinking for many years.
Yeah,
and it was basically, I mean, a lot of the for 15 years of that, we just had a great time. We were traveling the world with the people I wanted to be with, in the environment I wanted to be in, until 30 years of age, when my life kind of fell off a cliff, and then that's all I did, and didn't really have anything going on in my life other than go to the pub, sit on my bar stool, and just drink 3 or 4 pints an hour for 6 or 7 hours every day, and then go home and drink gin. So
right. Cool.
Yeah.
At midnight as well. And then what time would you be up in the morning?
Oh, so I mean, I'd be in work for roughly 9 o'clock.
Right.
You know, it got to the point where, because I was basically disintegrating physically and mentally, I'd normally drink. The cycle would be, I'd normally go for a few months, and then I would literally be in bed for 3 or 4 days.
Right, cool.
Until I could basically keep milk and a banana down.
Right.
And that afternoon I'd be in the pub. And then the cycle would run again.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I can relate to what you're saying, because I think the thing is, especially from the UK, and we have a lot of people who watch from other countries, it's a bit grayer there, it's a bit wetter there, and it's just cultural in a way to finish work and go to the pub and do those things. And it's easy to get caught in the habit of doing those things over and over again. Not saying everyone does, but I would say quite a majority do.
Well, the pub I drank in very quickly became my comfort zone. Because it didn't take long before I was comfortable in there, and then I was spending more time there with friends whose fathers were there, so we were involved with that.
Yeah. And
then I started spending a lot more money than other people. So then, of course, the dynamic of that is the landlord would make you steak and chips and say, "Oh, go upstairs and have a rest," and so you'd be looked after. And I'd be cashing checks on a Friday night when I come in from work, and obviously they'd say, "Oh, don't worry about spending it all here," knowing you're going to spend it all there. Yeah, and you spend all weekend there, you don't go anywhere else.
Yeah.
So I was just very, very comfortable in a place where I felt like I was more powerful than other people, if that's a way of putting it, because people were there less than I was. They would always in the eyes of the landlord and the bar staff, not be up there with me, if you like. So I could do what I wanted in that pub, although I wasn't that type of guy to cause a load of hassle and trouble.
Yeah.
So when as life got worse, I wanted to spend more time there.
Your comfort zone, as you
The
said,
comfort zone,
feeling
massively.
like a VIP in your comfort zone is. I can relate a lot actually, because my stepdad was a musician, and so like he used to play in all the local bars, or specifically in one pub, and so I was there from the age of 15. And so you know, on my 18th birthday, when I went into the pub, they were like, you're 18. I'm like, yes, you've been serving me for 3 years.
Yeah.
And I remember lock-ins and all sorts, you know, because obviously pubs close at 11 there, so we'd be there till midnight, half midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, some weekends and things like that. And it is a nice feeling to be recognised, to do these things. But like you say, they know you're going to spend all your wages in there. They know you're going to spend everything you brought with you in there if they can entertain you and keep you feeling comfortable all night.
You easily get sucked into it. I mean, the landlord that was there when I started drinking in my local pub, it was, "Oh, you're the son I never had," and we were actually very close, yeah. But it's only when you come out the other end of it all after 20 odd years, you think, "Oh wow, it was all just a big farcical, made up thing that none of it was true."
Yeah, absolutely. Like
you get so sucked into it, yeah, and you get sucked into the people that absolutely love you because they think they know who you are and the way that you behave and the way that you drink, and you're that personality. Yeah, so you get fully sucked into this thing where you don't like the environment you work in, and you think this environment is amazing. And you know, I mean, I had my relationship. I'm pretty honest and open about it all, right? My relationship with alcohol was never very good. My relationship with myself was never great, yeah. But it was manageable. I was drinking an awful lot. We were drinking constantly, me and my friends, a lot.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, people say, "Oh, it's an excuse, it's this, it's that." It's just what we all did.
Yeah, I can relate. I think you touched on something there. So, I mean, I think one of the things, and well, I think, do you think it has a lot to do with not being happy at work? You know, it's like end of the day relaxation and all those things, you know, maybe not quite feeling as fulfilled, or escapism maybe.
It was definite, as I say, because of what had happened previously in my life. And even now, it's just now because of the relationship I now have with myself, which is the way I put it, I'm just far more healthy. Yeah. So there are certain types of people that I prefer not to be around. We'll put it very nicely. I don't hate anybody. I don't dislike anybody anymore. I find myself, you know, wondering what happened in their childhood, and I'm more interested in what's going on now. But when you're working with these people and they're pushing buttons and they are narcissists and they're working against you in a pair, and they're using, because of the situation with my father and the other two being directors of the business, and myself, all shareholders, they used him to try and force me to do things and treated me just like, they actually say, "That son of yours." And I don't talk about it a lot, right? Because it comes across as, "Oh, shut up, don't be so childish."
Yeah, so let's just backtrack for people. So you were, when this became a problem, you were working in a family business, right? Or a part family business?
No, I mean, I started drinking. I started drinking at 15.
Okay, yeah.
So after losing my grandfather and playing rugby as well, because I played sport, and again, it's all this fitting in thing, not just trauma. It's this whole thing of, you want to be part of that team, then it's not just on the field, it's after. So we are quite heavy drinkers, yeah, and we like to party. We just do. but I go to work in another business first, and it was kind of okay. I mean, but there you had a lot of backstabbing going on, and the boss was a bully. I'm not healthy, but I didn't like people like that.
No.
I still, like I say, I'd rather not be around those people, or I will tell them how I feel.
Yeah.
At the time, being sort of just after my A levels at 19 years of age, 18, 19 years of age, going into that environment, I didn't have the confidence to say, hey, I'm not having that. Then we started our own business, and we took everything that was negative from that business into our new business. And it didn't take long before the things that we were doing to build the business were no longer worth anything. And I think we've commented on this, we've talked about this, where my business partner, who had more shares, was more senior in the other business, so believed he was in this business. People used to call to check if what I'd told them was correct. And then that changed, and they started calling and asking for me, not him. And that just blew his mind.
Right.
He could not cope with that. And at this time, right, I spent 10 years of my working life in that business, in our business, not telling people my surname.
Right.
Because I was concerned, rightly so, it turned out, that if I gave my surname to people, they'd say, oh, Daddy give you a job.
Yeah.
So I've got this huge thing going on that I've got to live up to this. I've got to keep getting, what's the word? What am I looking for? I'm not just there because of my father, right? I've got to keep confirming I'm good enough to be there, and I can do my job to all these multinational companies and whoever. But in the background, in my mind, it's always like, oh, I'm not good enough. And then I've got a business partner basically telling me the same thing. Now, my initial thing is to jump over his desk and do things which, just hit him, basically. That's what I wanted to do for many years, just assault him. But I couldn't do that, could I? Because I wasn't stupid. If I'd done that, then I'd have no business.
Yeah, sure.
So I go back to what I know best. I go back to saying, give me that drink, give me that environment, and I'm going to be happy.
So, yeah, when you're at work, it's really unfulfilling, really, because you've constantly been pulled away and all these ego battles going on.
Not ever when I was with my customers. Because I enjoyed the service. I enjoyed getting their equipment working and their systems up and running. What I never wanted to do was go back into our own office environment. And that was, I mean, the ridiculous thing about it in reflection, I was young when that happened, but I'm so fixated on who I'll be at 50 when I have my father's shares with my shares. And then all of a sudden my earnings will double or triple.
Right.
I am actually prepared to put up with it and just carry on living the life I am, right? Until I get what I want.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was never going to work, because when I turned yellow, so by 30 years of age, I was turning yellow and I was coughing and spluttering, and I'd stopped exercising a while back. So now that's all I am doing is drinking. And he basically came into the office one day and just went, that's his liver.
Right.
Right. Well, it's odd because his wife is a nurse. So he's been talking about my health, because otherwise he would have known it. And then I stopped drinking. So then I had DTs. So then I was hallucinating for 3 or 4 days. Then I was on an intravenous drip for a week in hospital. Blood pressure through the roof, nearly sectioned for the first time. So I had 3 months then. I just, all right, I won't drink.
And so that was at 30, was it?
30. And I was like, okay, I won't drink. And my girlfriend and I got a mountain bike and we went off in the sun and we rode around the place and we walked, and it was very nice. And not for a moment did I think what I was going to do when I went back to work.
Mhm. Yeah.
And my business partner just started talking about my health in the office, in front of customers and everyone in the office. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe he's doing this. So in all honesty, right, instead of changing something, I just went straight back to the pub and said, right, I'm going to drink.
Mm.
And basically then I had 8 to 10 years of depression. Really, I mean, as I moved further away from who I believed I should be, yeah, I just became overly depressed. These people were trying to take my business off me. And this is my issue, who would I be without my business?
Yeah.
Right. And now I'm like, I've gotten to a place where I'm thinking, right, I believe I'm not good enough because he's telling me. Nobody's going to employ me because I look the way I do and I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm a million miles away from who I should be. And I was just sort of going, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So this is where my first coach, who I've known for a long time because he was in the same business as us, he said, so basically you collapsing and being in the ICU for 3 to 4 days unresponsive until they gave me blood was passive suicidal ideation.
Right.
Yeah. So I said yes, because the only people I'd fallen out with my father, I'd fallen out with my mother, my sister, most of my friends. The only 2 people in my life that I cared about were my niece and my nephew. And sometimes I would be, the tears would be just streaming. And those 2 were the only things I thought, I cannot allow those to hear that I took my own life.
Mm.
But I think as I say, disintegrating in my personality, and I could see what was happening. I'd lost all of my muscle mass. I'm yellow. I hate life. I hate everyone. I want to kill people. I've told my doctor. My doctor's given me antidepressants because I've told him that. And I'm just giving up.
Yeah.
But I'm not giving up fighting.
Yeah.
I will not bow down to those people. I won't say, right, that's it, I'm out of here.
No.
Which now, I mean, that, I think when I'm talking to people, I understand I'm not the only one that gets to this point. That's the sadness of it.
Mm.
And that's the only reason I talk about it, because it's not something you sort of share with people because you think it's in any way a good thing.
Mm.
You can hardly believe that you've gone that far down that track.
Yeah, I think it's like knowing what I know now, so what we call default behavior. It's like until you learn a better way, which you've now done, your brain is just like, right, stress, that's the answer. Stress, that's the answer.
Yes.
And Randy's got a good point here. I mean, Randy also has suffered with addiction. He said he totally gets the feeling of not being enough.
Yeah.
You know, and it's filling that hole with things of the feeling that we're not enough because of the comparison, the competitiveness, even sometimes the education we've been given about the dog eat dog world and things like that, you know. And we are, like you said, we are our labels. I'm the guy who works in the company. I'm the managing director. I'm the exec. We see ourselves as these things rather than just us.
But they were the people I was bothering with as well.
Mm.
Right. So even my friends, it was competition, and there were 3 of us that were particularly close. And one of them said to me the other day, you and him were ridiculous. The competition was never ending. Right. And I was across the board. Of course, I wanted to be the best drinker. I wanted to be the best rugby player. I wanted to be the best musician. I wanted to be the best everything. And it comes down to one thing. You're not enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why?
You feel like you're enough. Yeah.
Why do you have to be so much better than somebody else?
Yeah.
And I just never, ever felt like I was good enough at something. I didn't know enough. I needed to do it faster, do it harder, do it this, do it that. You know, a friend of mine like a few years ago now said, you were ridiculously strong for somebody of your size. Because I wanted to lift the same amount of weight as bigger men. But it wasn't, you know, it wasn't a healthy relationship. That's the point. It was always unhealthy.
Yeah. So
there's nothing wrong with saying I want to be as strong as possible.
Yeah, but it's always stronger than others rather than stronger than you were yesterday and things like that. And so you said earlier about the death of your grandfather. So when was that? How old were you then?
I was 15.
You were 15. And so...
Sorry, 14 when I lost my grandfather. I was 14, 15, just before my 15th.
And do you think that had anything to do with
massive impact on my life? We were very, very close. You know, I don't know, because me and my dad, we were close. My dad's a great guy, and until we just fell out for 20 years, pretty much. But my grandfather, I just held him in some sort of esteem in my life. He was that guy. And when we moved, when I was 5, I was moved away from him. I didn't get on with that very well either.
Yeah.
But when he died, because he'd had a brain hemorrhage in Spain, and my uncle and my father flew to Spain to pick him up, basically, brought him back in an air ambulance. And I went to see him, and he was just a shadow. He wasn't the guy that I knew. He's this old man in pajamas. He was 62, my grandfather. But this man that I've always held up here, he was giving me his final speech, and he was slurring at me. And he was frightened, yeah? He was having brain surgery. I mean, I get it now, but at the time, I'm just horrified at what he's doing.
Yeah.
Don't let me down, don't let you down. And I'm like, oh God. And I said to my father, I said, I'm not going back. I said, I'll see him when he comes out of hospital. And then I was in my maths tutors one night, and my father was coming to get me because I had a puncture on my bike. And as I was walking down the drive, my father was coming out. I'm just coming to find you. And he said, oh yeah. He said, I got something to tell you. Grandpa's dead. I said, I'm sorry, what? He said, he's gone. I was like, no, that can't be happening.
Yeah.
I was going to see him. And he said, well, there was complications. Come in the house. And, you know, I mean, I don't talk about this very often either. My sister's crying, my grandmother's crying, and I walk into the lounge, and I immediately just remember thinking, what about me?
Yeah.
What about me? What's happened to my life?
Yeah.
And I think moving schools and all these things, yeah, I didn't get on with that very well, but this was my introduction, I believe, to Life's Not Fair, right? And yeah. I didn't like it.
No.
I really didn't enjoy that. And then I found drink, and I played rugby, and I smashed my mother's car up when I was 16. I wrote it off. I took it out and I wrote it off because I understand it more now. But at the time, I was just like, I drove it into a lamppost on the coldest night of the year, run away from the scene of the accident. It was criminal damage. Driving was disqualified. I was going to get done for all sorts. There's another trauma.
Yeah.
My mother went mental, as you'd expect. My father rang the police, and I had all this hanging over me. But I was just like, and then the girl, my girlfriend, who was in the car, I thought her father was going to kill me. Because he was a DCI drug squad, right? And I was just, oh God. But my life started just tumbling. Rugby, and then I fell out with teachers because I can't, or I certainly couldn't, put up with people that weren't being truthful. Yeah. So I am disintegrated in my personality. I'm going down and down and down and down and down. I'm getting more and more angry. I can't cope. Yeah. And that's all I want to do. I want to leave this planet. I don't want to be on this one. I want to be on another one. So I know where that is. That's at the bar in the club, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's where it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's like you say, what I'm seeing here is lots of unresolved issues that are slowly building up and building up, and you know, starting like you say from 5 years old, where you suddenly don't have any choice about the fact that your family are going to move away, and then fitting into new schools again, something I had to do a lot of. And you mentioned when we spoke before, you know, the same as I had, which was that all the kids had grown up together, and so they all had all these shared experiences, values, beliefs, and we get in there and we're just not on the same page in the same way. And although we make friends, we don't get we don't feel accepted.
I spoke about it today, actually. I did a little video on it because I'm friendly with those guys now. So, and we laugh about the fact, no, you weren't allowed in. They're so tight knit now. They're so close now. I'm with them and I don't really care. Yeah. But at the time, you can feel it. You can feel you're not part of that group. And at 11 years of age, it happened again. We went to another school. They all went to another school. So it all started again. And I talked about the fact that was not happening to me again. So that morning, that first day in that other school, my friend said, I looked at you and thought, who the hell is that guy? And in a moment, I changed who I was again. Yeah. But this is how we're starting to deal with life.
Yeah.
You're not resolving anything. You're just sort of shifting things around. And
I think it's this disconnection from things. And I think, like you say, when like you were sort of saying, you started to fall out with your family after your grandfather died and everything. You feel disconnected from them, so you're looking for connection from somewhere because you had this before and it felt good, and now it's gone. You start wanting to connect with people, and it's for the wrong reasons. Like you're saying, it's like, you know, you want to be accepted by the people. You have to feel like you have to be the best, and it feels like it's part of you. And I know you're a competitive guy. I mean, because you also did a lot of sports as well, didn't you? Like when you was that after 30, or when did you start cycling?
No, I mean, I played I played everything, but I played rugby primarily through my teens for representative rugby, district rugby, county rugby, national boys clubsy type rugby. And you know, I was quite good at rugby. I was fit. I was really very fit. I played tennis and all that sort of stuff. I was always doing something. Yeah. Because I fell out with my coach, we weren't allowed to play for the youth team, because we played for the school in the morning and the youth team in the afternoon. And you weren't allowed to play. So I had a mental hate list. Yeah. I didn't tell you that, right? I didn't tell you about my mental hate list. Yeah, I had a mental hate list right up until I was 40 odd years of age, until I sort of ticked them all off and understood why we were doing what we were doing. But I went round, I saw that teacher coach a couple of years ago, and I stopped. And I said, when I gave up rugby, were you happy? And he looked at me and his face screwed up, and he sort of said, why do you think that? I said, because that's what I believed. I said, and I absolutely hated you for it. And he looked at me and he just went, what? I said, I hated you. Because what he'd done, he'd taken rugby off me. Because I'd fallen out with him. He said, all right, if you don't play for the school, you can't play for the youth.
Right.
So that was his fault. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I gave up music because all these teachers, because I played the double bass and I was quite good. And there was only two of us that played the bass. They wanted me to be in the swing band, the wind band, the orchestra. I was like, oh, no, I've got time for this. So then they started putting pressure on me. Yeah. And I was just like, okay, not having this. Fell out with them all, though.
Yeah.
I couldn't just, right? So that was their fault. They took music off me. So what I've done now, right? I've lost my healthy ways of dealing with myself.
Yeah.
The only thing I have left, right, is to drink at the time.
Yeah.
because I love it so much, and I'm out with my friends, and I'm in the environment I want to be in. We're traveling, we're going back and forth to clubs, we're going all over the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I did my first British Lions tour when I was 23 to South Africa. But,
Right.
you know, if you're 23 years old and you can drink all day, every day for a month,
Yeah.
your relationship with alcohol is probably not very good.
Yeah, and you're oblivious to it, really. Like you say, it's part of the culture. It's these things, but I think maybe other people were drinking a lot, but not getting home in the evening and drinking the gin and doing the other things, and it's a bit more manageable. But you've got all of these experiences building up through your life that have left you empty in some way. I'm not saying, looking back, in some respects, the way you handled them is a little bit your fault, but you don't know at the time, do you? I've got similar stories.
I think at some point we have to accept, as long as we're not looking for excuses, we have to accept we knew no better when we were doing it. We knew no better. We did not know how to deal with it, so we did what we thought was best for us.
Yeah.
And if you go with that and you say, okay, but it's time to stop, yeah, move on.
Yeah.
But don't beat yourself up over it. I see too many people, to be honest with you, they've beaten themselves up over what they've done. I don't see the point. Why did you want to do that? It's happened. I mean, they've destroyed the relationships. It was just, when you're with somebody for 6, 7, 8 years and that's gone, and then you've got another one for 3 or 4, 5 years, that's gone. Yeah, and you're digging deeper, darker holes for yourself. You still point fingers and you're having your drink.
Yeah,
you probably, I don't think I was really enjoying it in the end. It was just something I did just to do it.
I still see that here, to be honest. Like where I live now, a lot of the guys, they work the land and they just drink every evening and at the weekend. And occasionally I've stopped going out so much here. Occasionally I used to go out the weekends and socialise with them, learn more Portuguese, and they just go on and on about how miserable their wives are and everything. I mean, really, all it is their wives are talking to them about how much they're spending on alcohol and how much they're drinking, right? And actually, there's nothing wrong with their relationship other than how much they're drinking, but they're not willing to admit that to themselves, and they see it as normal because it's what everyone else does.
I think that's really interesting, because now that I'm looking from the outside in, I was always pointing fingers and saying, you've got issues, as they were saying, you got issues. Well, clearly I had issues, right? But I'm like, no, you've got issues. And it does seem, as it's panned out, that they certainly do have issues. So I think I always sort of think that the relationship is good or it's not, right? If you have a decent relationship with yourself and you want to make a relationship with somebody else, you don't want to go drinking anyway.
No.
So, but it just exaggerates the issues within the people. It doesn't break the relationship.
No,
it just helps greatly.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely, it does exaggerate, but I do think a certain amount of denial can push people away, and I'm
definitely, I totally agree with you. Because I mean, let's face it, I don't really deny that. Of course I was in denial. That's all I wanted to do. I wanted my girlfriend to sit at home and wait for me while I went out with my friends. And that was and to be honest, that was before I started drinking.
Right.
I'd be in the car with my friends all day. Yeah. And we'd be round and round and round. And then I'd buy her something. Yeah. Something nice. And then say, right, sit there and wait for me. I'm off with my friends.
Yeah.
So that's not a great relationship beforehand, is it? But the weird thing about it,
you're not, when you have so many things that you can't face, that still unhappy about, you can't make good choices. You can't make the best decisions.
No, and that's another good point, because the moment you stop, you've got to face something.
Yeah.
So you don't stop.
No.
You're constantly doing something, so you don't have to. I mean, even sitting there in a lounge watching television with your girlfriend, I'm talking what, 20s, right? That would have meant that I would have been going too slow. And that's like, no, because if I go to the pub and I'm drinking and I'm laughing and I'm playing darts and I'm doing this and doing that and doing this, I haven't got time to think.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no time to think.
I think that leads on. We've got a question here. So, was the compulsive drinking making you emotionally numb, which is kind of what we're just covering here, and was that helpful in any way? So,
I don't think I'd have outbursts. So I was definitely numbing myself, but I'd have a flip, you know, something would come up that I couldn't cope with, however much I'd had to drink. One of my friends actually, she said to me not so long ago, yeah, you always had cuts. You always had cuts on your knuckles.
right.
Yes, yeah. So because I never hit, well, I very rarely hit anybody. I'd fight if I had to, but I'd hit walls, I'd hit windows, I'd smash this, I'd do that, right? So the anger, sometimes it was just like, it would boil.
Yeah.
So of course I was just doing this, because in the pub I could be my pub self.
Yes.
Yeah? So I could be the jovial guy that just laughed and joked and laughed and joked, and yeah, didn't really have to do anything other than talk. I never really talked utter bullshit, but I could talk bullshit with my friends.
Yeah.
I could hold a very good conversation with you after 20 pints, but I didn't have to, because me and my mates were too busy, really, a lot of the time, just taking the piss out of each other.
Yeah.
That's what it was. It was just constant.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to this. It's like a complete distraction from the reality of living.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's just constant like ribbing each other and joking and why and never a serious, but it's fun. It's bubbling up inside of you, and I think, you know, like there's a lot of repressed anger, which is repressed when everything's good, but as soon as something turns bad, suddenly you're boiling. You're going to explode. And
the funny thing, right? The funny thing about, you listen to anyone, but certainly my friends, because that's who I can really talk about, it would get vicious. It wasn't particularly friendly sometimes. And when you think about that now, you think, oh, what was going on with all of us? Yeah. We were all pretty much doing the same thing on different levels.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think most of my friends still are on.
Yeah. And mine, mine are too.
I see, you know, from when I was 20, I see them still photos in the same pubs we used to go to. Yeah. So I think like, so after 30, you had this basically near-death experience where you almost wanted out yourself as well. And there was a comment earlier about how stopping drinking suddenly is the worst drug to do it. So it's the worst thing to go cold turkey on.
30. I mean, I talk about it because I see too many people saying, oh, I went cold turkey, I manned up to it and all this. And I'm just going, well, I don't know how much you're drinking, right? Because that's all I ever say to anybody is, before you do that, you go and see a medical professional. You get a liver function test. You get your gamma GTs done. Because my gamma GTs, I think they were under 1,000, but they were just under 900, I think. Right? And one of the doctors said, how are you feeling? And I said, oh, terrible. I said, awful. He said, yeah, I'm not surprised, he said, because he said something like, if you've been out on a heavy bank holiday weekend, these would go up to about 80 something. He said, yours are like 900. I was like, well, he goes, what are you drinking? I see, at the time, they were hitting my knee with one of those little mallet things, yeah? And for my reactions, and my leg wasn't moving. And the guy was looking at me, the nurse was looking at me, and he was saying, how much are you drinking? And at the time I said, 100 pints a week. And that was being truthful. I wasn't telling him about the shorts, and I wasn't drinking more than that. But I think, well, I'll just tell him 100. And he was just like, what? And
it wasn't even close.
No. And it was the most horrific experience, right? 3 or 4 days, spiders and snakes crawling all over my body.
Yeah.
all over my hospital bed. And then eventually that stopped. And then I was clean because I've been on this drip. And then that's when the doctor I still have now told me, stop drinking or you'll die. Your liver is damaged, stop drinking or you'll die. And I went back to work and decided that I'd start drinking weaker lagers instead of the strong stuff that I used to drink.
Yeah.
And I stopped drinking shorts.
Right.
But then I was drinking 20 pints of sort of Budweiser and Kronenberg and Stella and that a night then.
Yeah.
So you get this idea in your head that I never said. The one thing I did at 30, I did at 40, which I didn't do at 30. At 30, I never said I'd stop.
Oh, okay.
Right. So at 40, I had this moment where I was like, oh my God, nothing to do with nearly dying, because I really didn't care. I'd gone past the point of caring. It was like, oh my God. And I think the thing afterwards was, look what I've done to myself. So potential brain damage, cirrhosis, esophageal stomach varices, acute duodenal ulcer, internal bleeding, no muscle mass. They're telling me that I won't be able to regain the muscle, that because of metabolizing protein, they think they may have to tie all the varices, all the veins in my esophagus and stomach, and then potential brain damage. And it was like, oh, I've got to live like this now.
So this is what happened to you after. So 30, you went in the hospital, near liver failure, basically. You detoxed, but decided to reduce the strength of the alcohol you were drinking.
Yeah, well, the amount,
you know, but even that is a bit of a. How long did that last? Is the question I want to ask. Did you manage to drink low strength alcohol for the next 10 years?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
But then obviously because of the damage you'd already done.
And then
you ended up in the hospital.
And then I collapsed.
I
literally collapsed in the doctor's surgery.
Right.
And they called an ambulance to the surgery, and my father and a friend carried me into the ambulance. They refused me at one local hospital, and then I was a week in an ICU and 6 weeks then in a hospital bed in Singleton Hospital, about 20 odd miles that way.
Right.
And that again was just horrific, because now I completely lost control. My mother was feeding me, nurses or my father would take me to the toilet. I couldn't walk unaided. So for me, that was the ultimate. You've controlled and controlled and controlled, or tried to control all your life.
Yeah.
And now you've completely lost control. You can't do anything for yourself.
Yeah. And so tell me, you were saying that that's the first time you said you're going to stop drinking. And
I said I was going to change my life.
You said you're going to change your life. Was
yeah,
that in the hospital or after the hospital? Or,
sorry?
Was that while you were in the hospital? Or
I had a lot of time to think in 7 weeks. And I was extremely angry at what had happened. I was so angry at my father for watching my business partners just prod me daily for 20 years.
Yeah.
Basically, when he told me, don't even bring the subject up with him because you know what he's like, he'd rejected me. And my mother basically looked at me and said, look what you're doing to your father. So my mother rejected me. I understand it now, Matt. At the time, I didn't.
Yeah.
Right? It was the most horrendous thing for your mother to turn around and say, sorry, mate, not interested.
Yeah.
Stop drinking, and you just think, that's the one thing I'm going to do now. I'm going to go drinking. But I'm going back to work. I'm going to take over. I'm going to introduce those guys to another way of living. I'm going to become a different guy. And it was basically this concept of, I know who I need to be in order to do that. So I went out there and did absolutely everything. I mean, I'm arguing with the doctor. When he says you won't be able to gain muscle, I said, I'll prove you wrong. And I'm sorry. I said, I'll prove you wrong. Really angry, you know? And he was like, well, I hope you do. I said, I will. And, you know, within I said, my friend we started walking first. And then one of the guys that drank with me and then walked with me came to the gym. And he said, they're all looking at you. So what do you mean? He said, you're the only one in you whose body is changing shape. Because now I am living like an athlete.
Right.
Right. I've learned about nutrition. I've got myself a personal trainer. Right. I'm in the gym every day. I've got time and I've got money. Yeah. So, and then I get introduced to cycling, which I absolutely love. And within like 2 years, whatever it was, of being on my deathbed, I was standing on top of Mont Ventoux, cycling from Barcelona to Monaco. Which that whole journey, that 2-year thing. But what I'd done in the meantime, I wasn't just blindly going out to get myself fit and right. I was dealing with all the emotional issues I hadn't dealt with for 30 years.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, isn't it? That, you know, what you've got is emotional issues stemming back from childhood.
And I cried and I cried and I cried. I've not cried
let out ever, and you've been almost, you said rejected, but it's kind of like an abandonment issue when people who you care about refuse to help you or support you, and you don't have those support networks. Like, and I think you had a lot of support before with your granddad until he passed away.
He was supportive. Yes, he was, and it was quite sad in some ways because when my mother's father died, I went to the hospital. My mother, my grandmother, my sister was there, and I walked in and I went, everyone, yeah, right. I looked at him. He was out of it. He had leukemia and he was on drugs. And I went, all right, everyone, okay, I'm off. And that was that. No emotion about it at all. No, oh my God, I've lost my grandfather. And I loved him dearly as well. He was a great guy, yeah. But I walked in, I walked out, and I went, yeah, I've done my job. I'm off.
Yeah.
I was talking to my mother about it. I said, that's terrible. I said, but I just couldn't allow that to happen to me again. I wouldn't allow it to happen.
No.
And that's how I lived my life.
Yeah.
Don't deal with it. Don't deal with it. Don't deal with it.
So guilt or blaming ourselves, you know, for not being able to admit to ourselves that we made that mistake, that we, you know, and like you said, I can't go back there, and then expecting him to come out, but you were 15. I mean, you know, it's not like we deal with a lot of death when we're 15 years old. And
I think it was the fact that I loved him so much, and I thought so much of him, and I saw him on every opportunity I could get, that I couldn't be bothered to go and see him when he needed me to go and see him.
Yeah.
And I was so guilty and angry, and the shame, and it was just horrendous. And a couple of years ago, again, my mother said, oh, I wasn't like that. I said, yes, it was, Mother. It was exactly like that. You're just another one of the people that are telling me I had no reason or need or excuse to feel the way I did.
Yeah.
I said, it was exactly like that. I hated myself for not going to see him.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, it's still out drinking and dealing with our problems through alcohol is still a big problem these days, because
massive.
Many of us don't have the support networks. We get told how to think, we get told how we should feel. People don't understand. They don't know how to understand.
But there's a complete misunderstanding, and I think a want of one, when it comes to the whole subject of addiction. We don't like to think about trauma and why somebody might be doing what they're doing. We just say, look at them, look what they're doing.
Yeah.
Which is why I asked the question in a very nice way, why do you do what you do? Which is what we're talking about. Is it numbing you? Is it distracting you? More than likely, and 95% or more of the time, it's exactly what it's doing.
Yeah, and I think it does, you know, trauma comes in a lot of different sizes as well. It doesn't necessarily need to be such a traumatic event as somebody dying or these other things. The experiences you had as a kid, I can relate. Like, as I grew up, I felt like an outsider. And that stopped me from accepting myself a lot. And I always felt like I wasn't good enough. And then my mum just didn't understand, my parents just didn't understand. And so they were like now pointing the finger at me, like, you're the problem. Yeah. It's not everything else. It's like, well, no, I just got unanswered questions. Now I look back, at the time I didn't know. And I'm like, you don't care, you don't love me. And, but they're not equipped to deal with it. So what were the things that you really felt like you learned and resolved, and the sort of the closure you got after 40, after you changed your life from all those things?
I think I went out and I proved to myself that I was none of the things that I thought I was. I wasn't a failure.
Yeah.
I wasn't worthless. I didn't have to care. And as I was working that out, I didn't have to care what people thought anymore, in a very healthy way. Yeah, I hadn't even gone as deep as why they're saying it or whatever. I'm already silencing the critic.
Yeah,
I'm building a relationship with something that doesn't exist, basically. But we're building a better relationship with a voice in the head. The voice in the head all of a sudden doesn't say you'll never get to the top of that mountain. It says, don't you dare stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it wasn't I'm gonna look like that, because I think we went up Mont Ventoux a couple of years ago in the car. I said to my friend, I said, the finest thing I did was cross that line there, yes, not get to the summit. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, I'd taken on the challenge. Because I started challenging myself again. And the more I challenged myself, the more I understood that I don't need to keep challenging myself to that degree.
Yeah.
So I've integrated all the bits of me that I just went, woo, don't know about that. We don't want to know about that.
I think, from my perspective right now, what I can see is the big change is that you not stop caring about other people, but stop caring what other people thought. I don't realize those people were not supporting you in the way you thought, and the only person you had to prove anything to was yourself.
Yeah, and I think, I'd reached a point in life where I physically, I just couldn't have cared about anyone else anyway. I was so chronically stressed. It was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I love being that person again. I love being the person that cares about people, cares about others' well-being. And I love seeing that my family, that I'm still fortunate to have around me, smile every time they see me, just because they see me look the way I do. We don't have to talk to each other. My mother just looks at me and she just smiles, because now she has got her little boy back.
Yeah.
And when I went to see my first coach, he said, have you apologized to each other? And I said, well, why? I think we just moved on. I said, I think when I saw my father with his head in his hands by the side of my hospital bed, and my mother was crying every time she came into the hospital, I think we moved on from apologizing. I think we all kind of said, oh, well, we're all happy you're alive. And a couple of years ago, my father apologized to me about how he dealt with my grandfather. And we chatted about that for the first time. Yeah. But I think where I am with it, I can't allow people, if I can possibly help anybody not get to where I was before they say, I've had enough of this.
Yeah.
A friend of mine actually said to me, and you've got to be careful what you say, because he said, you're too stubborn to have taken your own life. I said, yeah, but because I was so stubborn, I nearly lost my life.
Yeah.
I was hanging on to this identity, right? And them not beating me, I wasn't fulfilled and I wasn't enjoying life. There was nothing about my life that was good. Nice cars, nice clothes, money, spending many, many thousands of pounds a year on lager and going out. I'm probably spending what some people earn on lager.
Yeah.
Which is crazy figures.
Sounds like it. 100 pints plus all the shorts plus the gin.
In the end, I was spending £350 a week on lager.
Yeah.
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 which equates to, I think, something like 16 grand a year or whatever it was. And that's without the trips and things, yeah? But this guy came in the pub one day, and I was in the pub. I never stopped going to the pub. I just said I wouldn't drink. So this guy said, how much did you spend? And I said, well, I drank from 15 until 40. Said, on average, what would that be? I said, 200 odd quid a week. So he goes, that's £250,000. I was like, what do you want me to do? Cry?
Yeah.
I said, do you know what? Where I was, I would have bought speedboats and faster cars because I wasn't healthy.
No, absolutely.
So I think my compulsive thing would have just gone into something else. Definitely. Yeah. I came out of hospital. I've got the receipts, right? I dread to think. I was saying to my mother the other day, I've got like 400 or 500 pound jackets in my wardrobe, right? Because I was in the Hugo Boss shop every other day because my girlfriend at the time lived in Cardiff. I was in there all the time buying all the jeans they could give me, all the t-shirts they could give me, all the jackets they could give me.
Yeah.
Right? Because I hadn't sorted me out.
Yeah. I think that's it, isn't it? It's like, ultimately, we're not taught to find ourselves, to see options in life. And when we don't have the support networks that we need, because everybody deals with things differently, and especially like our generation, things it's sort of brush it under the carpet, ignore it, I'll toughen up, it's not about finding the resolution that you finally found at 40 years old. And so now you've started helping people, and I mean, obviously it makes sense for you to help people with addiction because you've been through the tough of it, and especially alcohol, it's one of the most dangerous drugs out there. Obviously, as far as long-term damage, other things that can kill you quicker, but long-term damage, alcohol is definitely the worst. What would you say to somebody that maybe thinks they've got a problem? What's the thing that's going to help them now change, what do they need to do to start making that decision? Because it's not usually an overnight thing.
No, it wouldn't be an overnight thing, but I think if you, what I normally say to people, I know it's difficult because we're not taught this, but I see too many people with dry January, this sort of thing, where it's again made into a competition. It's made into a look at me, look what I'm doing. If you're going to do it moderately. So depending on how much you are drinking, cut back in a way where it's manageable and it's not going to do you any harm. But do it for yourself. Don't make it an issue so you say a big deal to other people, because that's not a motivator. So if you're drinking every night and then you're going to say, well, I'm not going to drink every night, I'm going to have a drink in the house or whatever you're doing, make it about you, because I don't think I ever made it about me.
Yeah.
When at 30, when I was going into the pub, I'd make a big thing about the fact that I'm not drinking until my birthday.
Yeah.
I hadn't internalized it. And then you get a pat on the back, people going, oh, and then they got their opinion about you. Well, when you just say I'm doing it for me and I don't want to, what other people think immediately means nothing. But don't deprive yourself of the alcohol. But it really does depend. I mean, I know people, I was drink dependent at a young age, I'd imagine, easily, right? And most of the people I know would be borderline, whether it's an addiction, certainly they need it. Yeah. And I see them leave it. They are able to leave it. Yeah. But then it's not long before they're back at it. So that relationship is not good.
Yeah.
But whether it's the full blown, because we've got this idea of addictions, haven't we? It's as that guy I was talking to said, oh, you've got to tell people you were falling off the bar and you were really angry and you were upsetting everybody. And I said, well, that wasn't me. And that wasn't my experience of drinking.
Yeah, well, you got told by a coach who said to promote myself
like that. And
you've got to tell lies. You've got to go out on social media and tell lies and say you're aggressive and all these things.
I won't do it. I won't do it.
Yeah.
Because that's not who I was.
No.
And I mean, it's not a great thing, is it? But say you can literally, a friend of mine said, how much have you had to drink? And I said, oh, 12 or 14 pints. And he said, mate, how much are you drinking? He said, because you're holding a sensible conversation with my father, and my father believes you've had about 3 pints. Right? But you would never get me to admit that I had a problem. So I suppose there's another one. I mean, if you cannot go from your office or wherever the first thing you're thinking of doing is going to that pub, either you got a bad relationship with the pub or it's drink. If the first thing you do when you walk through the door of your house is open your drinks cabinet, type of thing, or every night, I mean, I'm amazed. I was actually shocked how many people say, oh, you know those stopper things for the wine? Yeah, they're a waste of time.
Right.
Because her and I will have a bottle, and then we'll have another bottle. And of course, when the third one's open, there's no point putting that in it, is it? So you're thinking, so how many times a week you doing that? Oh, 3 or 4 times a week. So you're drinking 3 bottles of wine 3 or 4 times a week.
Yeah.
And then you come into the pub. Right.
Yeah. So it's like the default thing is to get home and drink, or finish the week and drink, or when you have a stressful situation, just go and drink. Then
but
the
I mean,
best thing to do is to sort of start looking at yourself and asking, you know.
But I also spend a lot of time. I mean, now my friends are, some of them are pro athletes. They're doing triathlon, they're doing whatever they're doing. I spend a lot of time around guys now that are doing triathlon, a lot of cyclists. I spend a lot of time in the gym, and I see those behaviors now. If I'm in the gym at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, the guy is there. Right? I'm there for a reason, and the guy is there at 6 o'clock in the evening as well when I'm there. You're thinking, really? What are you doing then? I know why I'm there.
Yeah.
I fully know why I am there. But I'm thinking, so when we talk about relationships, you think, well, do you need to be in the gym twice? Because this is what we do, isn't it? Because we got this pecking order of drugs is better than drink is better than drugs. Exercise is better than drink. And what we have is, I think, what I see people doing without awareness is they just swapping one for another.
Yeah.
Like I said, in 2017, I did 12,500 miles on that road bike in a year. I was doing 300-400 miles a week during the summer. And everyone basically gave me the identity now of, where's your bike? You're a cyclist. What they didn't understand what I was doing was I was using it as a means to find flow states and to resolve my issues.
Right.
I am still resolving my issues all the way through 2017. It's only in 2017 I said, I don't want to go back to work.
Yeah.
When I actually said, nope, no more, I'm not going back. Because I don't want to fight anymore for no reason. Because all I've done all my life, one way or another, is fight. I'm just fed up with it. When you can put your energy into something far more constructive.
Yeah. I think that's it. I mean, like, if you're choosing those things, then you need to think about what you want from your life. You know, if you're choosing alcohol every night when you get home, alcohol to deal with your problems. You know, you're drinking 3 bottles of wine, you're drinking 10, 20 pints, then you need to think, like, there is never going to be what you're looking for in that. Yeah.
100%. And I spoke about this yesterday. It's never going to be there, man. It's not there. It's not there. It's not in the end of that glass. It's not in the gym. It's not nowhere. It's here.
Yeah.
And it's like when you realistically talk about it, and you say, right, have you ever talked about fulfillment? You think, I was going to work in a business I wouldn't let go of, in a job I'd learned to hate, with people I hated. But then to cope with all of that, I was going to the pub every night to just help myself into a hospital bed or a coffin a little bit more quickly. And when you actually think of it like that, you just think, oh, goodness me, really?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it seems almost like, how did we convince ourselves that this was a good idea? You know, why were every day? How did we not see where this was going to end up? You know, it's like, and often we, you know,
Well, I
I
mean, there's
remember seeing people that
something.
drank and not,
Sorry,
and everything. Oh, that would never happen to me. You
I
know.
mean, something we've not discussed really. I often talk about it. Of course, I was feeling sorry for myself,
Mm.
but it wasn't necessarily, again, the amount of alcohol I was drinking was making it worse, and the lack of sleep and the lack of nutrition, right? Because all of that was going on. I was feeling sorry for myself. I mean, my business was going further and further away from me. I had all this going on in my family life. I wasn't taking responsibility for it, any of it. So the connections you talk about, my sister left for university. I never saw her again, really. Right. And I used to talk to my sister. And yeah, I was feeling sorry for myself. So yeah, I'd go to the pub and yeah, give me a drink because life is shit. But it's perspective.
Yeah.
It's all about perspective. But when you're in that hole, it's very difficult to change that without actually saying enough. I'm going to change it. I'm going to at least put a stop on it, just to see, just to take the blinkers off for a moment and have a look what the world is like.
Mm.
And as soon as I did that again, it was like, oh, I'll never want to drink in my life again.
Yeah.
I won't do drugs. I won't drink again. I won't now overdo anything. Right? Because now it's like, no, this thing of balance, the overall balance, yes. But I like a life where it flows. Yeah, with the ebbs and the flows, and it's just yeah, this is great. This is life.
Mm.
And I've never felt like this about life before.
Yeah, that's it. I think it's what you've always been looking for, but you thought it was in the bottom of a bottle or in other things until you're on
Yes, I
death's
mean,
door.
it was definitely in the cars I was buying, and they were getting more and more expensive. I couldn't have enough clothes. So, I mean, I bought every Superdry t-shirt. Got them all, right? Don't even particularly like them, but it was like, that was the thing to have at the time. So I've got them all. Timberland boots, you name it. I've got the colors. I could never have enough.
Yeah, yeah, and that's it. And it's because, like you say, it's all in here. I mean, I think this is one of the things that maybe we didn't mention well enough is that although you were drinking, life was okay on the other side. Life was okay. You had an income, you had a business, you didn't like it. So, but
It
you
took a
didn't
long
see any
time.
other options. You just didn't see a way out. You didn't see change.
But that's all I could see. I was so fixated on having those shares and owning only 50% of the business till I worked that one out. Because another friend of mine said something to me one day about 51% and 49% businesses. And I was like, oh, what? But who I would be and what I would have when I had that money and power and right, I'd be able to have so much more, then I'd be happy. And I wasn't leaving. Right. And you think that's not a problem with the alcohol. That's a real problem with yourself.
Yeah.
So, and then I'm prepared to just basically sit it out doing what I was doing as I hated myself more and then hated the business. But it was a gradual thing as you're
the sorrows in alcohol rather than resolving the problems.
You are now a shadow of your former self. You're a shadow of the person you think you should be. Right. And you really have gotten to a point where you're thinking, well, I'm not sure if there's a way back from this.
Yeah.
I know what I'll do. I'll go over there and drink. And this is what I'm about, isn't it? This is got to be put out there so people can see where I don't use it as a motivator. I don't, oh, you'll this and you'll that. Right. I like to say to people, I can tell you where you might end up. Put it in a different way. Because I was watching something on the other, motivated people telling them they're going to have liver cirrhosis and this, that, and the other really isn't a motivator for them. Right? What you must show people is how good life could be when you don't do these things anymore.
Yeah, I think that's really crucial.
Be the example.
Yeah. So normally we are on for about an hour. We've got a bit over today, so I'm going to wrap it up. But I just want to cover off some of the points we talked about today. Is like, so like, I mean, if you think you're turning to alcohol to resolve your issues or problems, or not even aware that that's what you're doing, maybe you've got unresolved childhood traumas, things that you're unhappy about that still come up in your memory, unintentional rejection and abandonment from your people who were supporting you, family, friends. Maybe you feel like you didn't fit in, you know, and you've got regrets and failures from failures that you, or things that you call failures that you still haven't learned from, guilt and shame, and even chronic stress, fear, self-doubt, or doubt you can change things. It doesn't make you less of a person. Often we don't know how to resolve the things with ourselves, and we just haven't seen that there is, like Jason just said, like a better way of being. There's something better out there for us. There's something that we're called to do, and something that's actually going to fill all those holes. And it's never going to be alcohol and drugs. Because from my experience, the way I describe them is like, I call them altered states, you know. So they're just like what virtual reality, putting on those goggles, you know, and suddenly but they give you feelings as well. Yeah, so you've got all these emotions and all these things, but they're short-lived when something really bursts your bubble, like you were saying about earlier. So if anybody here needs help with that and they want to find Jason, his details are on the event page, and they will be under this video if you're watching on YouTube or if you're listening on Spotify or Apple. So be sure to contact him, and he will help you find what it is you're looking for, that you're filling the hole with alcohol. And don't think you're alone. I've been there. Jason's been there. I know many people that are still there and have been there themselves, and all the people that have escaped the trap, the illusion that it is the place to be, are much happier now. Much happier now. Yeah, including Jason.
100%. 100%. My life has genuinely never been this good. And like I said, and the life of my loved ones, I don't think has been this good for certainly 30 years.
Yeah. And that's a crucial point as well. You know, when often we feel like we can't undo the damage we've done, but really it's all internal, the guilt, the shame, the blame. All we need to do is make that change, and suddenly it fixes all those relationships. I can relate completely to what you're saying. I thought people were going to blame me forever, and they just wanted me to get better. They just wanted to see me living my life.
It's a cliche, but you'll soon find the supportive people. I found some highly supportive people around me.
Yeah.
And the others just drop away anyway, because that's growth.
Yeah, that's it.
It's not a personal thing. It's just you move on, you leave them behind.
The thing with that is, this is from my own experience, and I feel like yours is similar, is not resolving those issues of family rejection and abandonment and loss make you feel like you need those people that are holding you in the trap, and really there's nothing there. When I changed my habits, I lost 90% of my friends because they saw me as my habits, not me. And that means they were not real friends. They were just party friends, you know. They actually had no interest in me not being drunk and stupid. You know, that was it. It's just there to make them laugh, really. So we've got lots of thanks, and so many people like amazed with your journey, Jason, and really they've loved, they like, you know, shocked. You've come so far, Jason. You're inspiring Aqua journey, and thank you for sharing this. It is an astonishing achievement, and it is. I mean, near death at 40 years old, to come back and then cycle to Italy.
I've done. Yeah, we did Barcelona to Monaco. I've done Pisa to
Monaco. Sorry.
Yeah, I've done Nice to Rome now. We just done Santander to Lisbon. I've done Santander to Malaga. I love it. I love life. It's
Right.
amazing.
Well, next time you do Lisbon, you have to find, you probably came past my house, to be honest, because the road from Santander to Lisbon comes in right next to where I live. So I've driven it a few
Really?
times. Yeah, past Badajoz. So there's two ways into Portugal. But anyway,
Awesome.
yeah, thank you everybody for coming. Thank you
Thank
for
you, everyone.
comments and interactions. Look forward to seeing you next week when I'm going to be telling my story. So I'm going to be interviewing myself, which is going to be the most interesting experience I've ever had. I was kind of thinking whether I'd have to move from one side of the screen to the other and put on a hat. And I was thinking, right, what hat should I wear? And I was thinking, well, I'd like a Slash from Guns N' Roses with the black curly hair, but who knows where that came from. Anyway, everybody, thank you very much. Have
Awesome.
a great rest of your week.
Thank
Thank you too,
Bye.
Jason. It's really
Bye.
great. Right. There are lots of people saying bye now, so we'll see you soon.